They want it to be regulated. They wanted it to be controlled. They want it to be something that works for them. And I think that's absolutely wrong. We don't want to talk about the fact that no one can silence it. No one can stop it. The world has changed a lot in 15 years, but what intelligence services do really hasn't. And I want to start with that because while their practices haven't changed, the scale of them has. And that's what really brought me forward. It's not that, the government was spying on somebody. They've always done that. It was the government was spying on everybody. And it wasn't that they didn't want to do that in the past, but that they didn't have the capability to do it. We were talking about things that were the Stasi's, wet dream. And now we see that creeping everywhere. Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, was one of the people that I tweeted about a few weeks ago. I had hoped to speak about here because I think this really emblematizes what has changed. So for those who are unfamiliar, just a few weeks ago, we saw a well-coordinated effort by the old powers to gain control over Telegram by taking its founder, Pavel Durov, as, frankly, a hostage in France. Now, they had been complaining publicly that Telegram, which is not a meaningfully secure messenger, by the way, please don't call it a secure messenger when you're describing it to your friends. It's more like a standard chat group that has DMs attached. It does have one capability to send end-to-end encrypted texts called secret chats, but almost no one uses. Anyway, the state apparatus of the US and Europe had been complaining that Telegram had not been providing them enough control over its ecosystem, the ability to shut down channels at will, as they do on Facebook and everybody else, to dox their users, and so on. Now, because of some weaknesses in Telegram's design as a service, Telegram did have this ability. So the governments knew Telegram could be doing this if they wanted to, but Telegram apparently did make at least some efforts to resist demands to share this ability for what that's worth. So what happens? Durov is lured to France under whatever pretext. I think it's even public now. He's immediately tossed in the dungeon, and presto changeo, a few days later, he's out on bail, and Telegram changes its terms of service. That is the unfortunate reality of how the world works when you don't architect your service to resist state interference at the protocol level. And that's what's so special and powerful about crypto broadly, Bitcoin specifically. But, it's that kind of mentality where you design against the worst possible case to avoid the inevitable. In Durov's case, I hope he gets out. And once he's in a free place, he genuinely fixes the design problem that put him in the hot seat in the first place by creating a service that does not put too much power and data in vulnerable human hands. You have to design your app so that there will never be a head that the state can point a gun at, or they will do it. But the real lesson here, why it's so important, is not about Durov. It's not about Telegram. It's about us. We are all entering a new phase of history where what we considered the more enlightened collection of states globally, ones that had embraced the classically liberal ideal, and I want to clarify here that I'm talking about the supremacy of the individual's right to themselves, the right to decide and direct one's life, rather than whatever it is that political parties are branding as liberalism today. The governments of these states that used to champion that idea are now some of those working hardest to roll it back, to bureaucratize, to influence, to nudge, to shape, to ultimately control each and every individual within their territory and beyond, to the extent made newly possible by technology. This is not a different story than 2013. This is the same. Now, in their defense, these states genuinely seem to believe that this is the path to utopia, that they genuinely know what is good for you to a greater extent than you do, because they're the expert. Everyone in this community, knows the memes, whether you're going to eat the bugs or whatever. The thing to remember is that this is a story that we have seen play out in history before. You have the experts telling you to go out into the field and kill the sparrows. And now we're in the moment where we're waiting to see what's going to happen next. So it seems to me that the fight over Telegram and even the EU's new chat control proposal, which if you haven't heard of it, you very much need to go and look out for it because the EU is trying to push it again, force it through in the next few weeks. It seems to me that these proposals are less interested in surveillance than they are in control. They're laying the procedural framework for the global control of the voices of every volume. And that's what it's really about. It's not that they're worried about some secret conversation. It's not that they're trying to shake down Durov for the keys to some conversation. It's that they see people talking in ways that they don't like, ways that they consider to be misinformation, ways that they consider to be disinformation, ways that they consider to be socially harmful, that they consider to be structurally undesirable, and they want to silence it. And that is dangerous. That's the point of no return. We lose that, there's no coming back. Which brings us to modernity and all the ways that it's changing around us. This was not the sort of talk I expected to have when I woke up yesterday, which I spent much of the day reading about Israel's unprecedented campaign of what by all of what by all reports appears to be indistinguishable from terrorist bombings. Consumer electronics across countries simultaneously exploded in pockets. Hands, faces, cars lost their drivers in mid-motions. The pockets exploding, at checkout lines, at the head height of your children. Now, it's not the first time that we've ever seen a remote bomb, but it is the first time that we've ever seen a broadcast bombing at this scale, a message sent over public communication systems that reaches consumer electronics that are lying in wait. Because this is how pagers work, right? It's not like one-to-one, these things are chiming back, they're checking in, they're phoning home. They're just listening to the equivalent of radio. They hear the signal and they go off. The person who's triggering it doesn't know who you are. They don't know where you're at. They don't know whether you're holding it, your child is holding it, and demonstrably they do not care. You don't need to take a position on the legitimacy of whatever the hell it is today, Hamas or Hezbollah, or any of Israel's targets, one way or the other, to realize that they have broken a taboo that is very, very dangerous for the comfortable life that we, in sort of the developed part of the world, have cocooned ourselves with. Nearly every single one of you is carrying a remotely controllable device on your person that you have not opened and inspected for explosives. You probably can't even open it. And even without the explosives, right? You go, oh, I'm not worried about the Mossad, right? The batteries in your phone, in your laptop, in your electric car, they hold tremendous amounts of embodied energy. And even if it's not going to explode in the same violent way, they can absolutely catch fire. You can go look at a line of them on YouTube. These are things that will not far in the future be able to burn your house down while you sleep as it's on the charger in the other room at the push of the button. And who would we blame, right? It wasn't China that started this. And this brings me to the last thing, which is the rejection of our traditions by some in our community. I saw this recently, and I don't want to be unfair to Sailor, but be contrary to his point here, because I haven't followed it closely. But I saw someone digging up old quotes here, and they were saying, I'll read this, that we don't need to talk about like the anarchist angles of Bitcoin. We don't want to talk about privacy. We don't want to talk about the uninterceptable design. We don't want to talk about the fact that no one can silence it. No one can stop it, because that's going to make billionaires uncomfortable. And they want to be investing in something. They want it to be regulated. They want it to be controlled. They want it to be something that works for them. And I think that's absolutely wrong. We need to talk about the rules and values of the system, the crypto part of cryptocurrency. That's what makes it special. I don't care if it makes billionaires uncomfortable. I don't care if it makes JP Morgan slower to allocate. They don't get a vote, because frankly, they're coming along on this ride, whether they like it or not. The dollar is done. Nothing stops this train, as when Alden says it. Debasement is baked into our models. We see what's happening with the percentage of currency issuance, the deficit spending. It might not happen this year. It might not happen next year. It might not happen in 5 years. But it's very clear looking at the progress of history where these things end.
So there's certain things about this reality that we need to keep in mind. Okay? So first of all, what's really important to understand is that what creates this reality is our conscious, our imagination, our perception. Not anyone else, us, okay? So in other words, the wealth in the society is our conscious. The amount of thought we put into something. And so let me give you an example. Let's just say that I were to ask you to make a vase to sell on the marketplace, okay? While you're making this vase, if you are listening to music, if you are chatting with a friend, if you're not fully conscious and focused and attentive about making this vase, it won't be very good. But if you are completely focused on creating the most beautiful vase you can, and you're not distracted by anything, then this vase will be beautiful and therefore more valuable in the marketplace. So in other words, it is our conscious attention that creates wealth in this world. And it is really money or capital that extracts and stores our consciousness and turns it into wealth. All right? So that's a really important concept that most people don't understand, but you need to understand this if we are to understand the nature of reality itself. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to understand. This reality is structured to extract our consciousness in order to create wealth for the elite, for these people. Okay, and historically, there have been different mechanisms that you can use in order to extract and store wealth. All right, so you have maybe religion, okay? And so think of pyramids, because pyramids in Egypt are able to focus your attention and motivate you to do certain actions, okay? To engage in religious worship. But really any temples. So that's one form of capital. Another form of capital, of course, is the idea of stories. Homer is the father of Greek civilization because he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, which is able to focus people's attention and drive them to great things. Then you, of course, in today's world, you have the Bible. And the main mechanism to extract and store wealth in today's world, of course, is the US dollar. But there's another force that's being created in order to replace the US dollar. And this is called artificial intelligence. All right, so what we'll discuss later on is that there's actually a war going on for the soul of humanity, for the human consciousness between the US dollar, the old world order, and artificial intelligence, the new world order, okay? But I want you to keep this in mind. So that's the first thing I want you to understand. Second thing that I need you to understand is that these people, we don't know who they are, okay? But what we do know is that they don't force us to do anything. There's not enough of them, okay? The way they maintain power is through manipulation and trickery and deception. And we know this because in Plato's Allegory of the Cave, one day for whatever reason, one guy decides, you know what? I feel as though this is not the real world. I feel as though there's something outside this cave. So he or she starts messing around with the chains and realizes, these aren't chains. These are just like ropes. I can just like get rid of them. And this chain around my neck, it's like a ribbon. I can snap it off. And he doesn't know why he does this, but he does this. He does do this. And when he does this, they don't even care. Like, whatever, man, do whatever you want. And so he releases himself. He's blind because he's been in the dark all his life, but somehow he recognizes that there's this light outside the cave. And he is compelled to this light. So he's walking, stumbling to this light. And again, they are like watching him. They're like, we don't care. Do whatever you want, man. They don't stop him. He goes out into the light. And now he's outside. And it's pure light, okay? He's left the cave. And at first he's in pain. And he struggles to reorientate himself to this new world. But then eventually he falls in love with this world. It's a beautiful world. And it's like for him, heaven. And he's like, oh my God, this is the real world. The cave is a fake world that we created ourselves. Let me go back there and tell everyone about the truth. And when he goes back, they, again, the elite, don't stop him. Like, whatever you want, man, do whatever you want, okay? So they who are in power, you think they have an army, you think they have magic, and you think that they're evil, but really, all their power rests on our belief in their power. They themselves don't have any power except to manipulate us. Okay, that's the second thing you need to understand. The third thing you need to understand is that even though this is a fake world, people don't know this. They think it's real. In fact, they believe it is so real that they are willing to die for it. So that when this man who's seen heaven, who's seen the truth, who's come back to tell everyone, these chains that you have aren't real. We can break free and escape into the real world. If he dares to tell them this, together they will kill him. So in other words, the reality is a hallucination. It's created by us, but we fall in love with it. We're so attached to it psychologically and emotionally that if anyone tells us it's fake, we kill them for it. So it's these three things I want you to keep in mind as we explore our world. Because our world is actually just Plato's cave. You need a force in order to create this reality, to chain us together, okay? And this force, of course, is called the American Empire, or the Empire. Basically, just the military. But they themselves don't really want to control this world because they're an army, okay? So what they do is they allow the creation of a financial order, a global financial order, which then constructs the game that we play, okay? And these people then construct the reality that we live in, okay? So this is the global financial order. And what is this global financial order? Well, at the very top is something called the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, okay? The central bank of central banks. Below them is the World Bank, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which controls the rules of the global financial order, and then below them are something called the central banks. Okay, so the Federal Reserve in the United States, the the People's Bank of China in China. Okay, the Bank of England in England. Okay, so together they create the global financial order. And what is the global financial order? It's just to use the U.S. dollar as a main mechanism of wealth extraction and wealth storage. Another way of understanding these people is to think of them as the game masters. The ones above us who's constructed the game and controlling the rules of the game as we play it. Okay, the game masters. So once the game has been created with the rules and incentives, now we can play the game. And this game is called the global economy. So when China trades with the United States, when you go off to Europe on vacation, you're all participating in a game created by the financial order, okay? And the purpose of this this global economy is to have everyone play as much as possible so that wealth can be transferred from the world to the United States, the powers that be, okay? And they do this through two mechanisms. The first is the US dollar. So every time you use the US dollar, you're actually paying a tax to America because America has the power to print as much US dollars as it wants, okay? And the second way that it does this is through something called a price hierarchy, okay? A price hierarchy. So the global economy is divided into tiers, okay? So resources are considered the cheapest, even though in reality it should be the most expensive, right? Because resources are limited, they're finite. Above resources, of course, is manufacturing. And above manufacturing is knowledge economy. And then the highest is finance, okay? Basically the game masters. All right, so and as we can see, once with this price hierarchy in place, what we can do now is divide the world according to the specialties, okay? So resource, of course, would be Russia, the Middle East, the GCC, okay? Saudi Arabia, these places, okay? So these places provide resources. Manufacturing then would be China, right? Knowledge would be Europe and the Five Eyes, okay? Basically the Anglosphere, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Britain, and then finance, of course, the United States. So as you can see, this is a system that benefits the United States and its allies to the detriment of China and Russia. Okay? But this is how the game is structured. Of course, if the United States doesn't like you, what it can do is not allow you to play this game.